Welcome back to our channel. My name's Natalie.
I'm Erika, and this is Drunken True Crime.
Okay, so for those of you that are new, welcome. We're very excited to have you. For those of you who are returning,
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for the support and thanks for coming along on this shit show that is us.
Yes.
We have a few disclaimers that we want to go through. First, we do talk about true crime cases, so there will be instances where things get a little gruesome. The second thing is that we will be drinking while we're doing this. We have a different cocktail each week. It is our Halloween episode.
In honor of this week, we have named our drink the Who Shall Not Be Named.
Anyone who didn't get that reference, you can just leave now.
I'm a Slytherin straight up, so Lord Voldy, what up?
I'm not Hufflepuff, and I don't know how I feel about it. If there's any other Hufflepuffs out there, just let's join forces, okay? So the third thing is that you will see us as we go through this case and through any of our cases, you'll see us laughing, dancing, joking around. That's not us making light of the case by any means. That's not us making fun of the victims. Most of the time we're making fun of ourselves. It's just a way that, one, we're ourselves while we talk about the case, but two, to just lighten it up a little bit because some of these cases are very, very hard to handle or difficult to hear. Then the fourth thing is again, we're here to be ourselves. That's what this channel is about. We both cuss quite a bit, so you'll hear us cussing throughout. I'm sorry if that offends you, but that's just us. With that being said, this is our Halloween series for the month of October.
Ooh, spooky.
So we have been trying to cover something that's either like spooky or has to do with like paranormal activity, ghosts, demons, something of that nature. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Erika, who's going to take us through her case this week.
So this week, I was thinking, what should I do? Halloween is, the spooky season where you get to cover some cases that you love. I actually lived in New England for quite a while, about 5 years, and I was like, I really miss New England. What should I cover? And I thought, what better way to bring in the Halloween season by covering the Salem Witch Trials? I've kind of talked to Natalie about this, about if you know anything about the witch trials and the history, which I'm sure you are. I mean, you've had to join like a history class about this.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me because this is back in the 1600s and it's still happening today.
Yeah.
Modernized. It's still happening that people that are accused for a crime they didn't commit, and it is still happening today where they are found guilty.
Yeah.
With that being said, I'm going to get into the Salem Witch Trials. A false tongue will never make a guilty person. This is by Susanna Martin, the victim of a Salem witch trial. So imagine that you are put on trial for a crime you did not commit.
Yeah.
And you have two decisions. Should you confess your crime, ask for forgiveness, knowing that you might be released after confessing this falsified crime?
Yeah.
Or state your innocence and be tried and found guilty and then executed.
I'm one. I would confess. I would do a false confession. We've talked about this before, but I would because you know your fate when you have a false confession. You don't know your fate in the opposite. And I am so here for the people who stick to it and are strong and stick to it, their innocence.
Knowing you're going to be executed.
Yeah, I can't deal with the not knowing. No,
This is what the victims had to go through during 1692 when all of this took place. These were their two options. You would make a false confession, apologize, and then knowingly in a couple of months be released for those crimes. However, you would have to name a few more accusers, or you could insist that you were innocent of these crimes and then plead guilty and be executed by hanging.
I would confess. 100%.
That gets to my next question. Would you give a false confession or risk it by public hanging?
False confession.
Knowing you would have to out other people that are innocent too?
Oh.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
Those were the choices back then.
No, I couldn't do that. The guilt would get me. No, because then living wouldn't even be worth it because I'd be so guilty. No. Okay. No, I would stick to my guns.
So this was the fate of the victims accused of witchcraft in the village of Salem, Massachusetts, between February 1692 and May of 1693. Salem was settled in 1626 by Puritans, a group of English Protestants that lived with a very strict and isolated for the people living in Salem. So if you know anything about history and the Puritans, they lived a very strict code. So not only was it a strict, isolating kind of neighborhood, they were also battling during that time their Native American neighbors and also French settlers to try to battle for that land.
Sounds like a great time to live.
Oh, it sounds great.
Like,
People feared of starvation and also disease at that point too. Like the plague was running rampant a couple of years before that in England.
yeah.
So a lot of people fled over here. The Puritans fled over here to kind of get away from that. However, they ran the risk of starving and having other diseases that were taking place during that time. And people were dying from that.
Can we also just take a second and talk about how, like in this day and age, right? 1600s.
This is still modernized. This is still happening.
There's so many of these things that are still happening.
Yeah.
Like the plague, COVID-19, like people getting like giving false confessions to try
and
to
I wanted to bring up the West Memphis 3 because that is a famous one for being accused just because they were listening to Metallica and Satanic Panic was really big back then in the early 90s.
Central Park 5.
Central Park 5.
Yeah, this is...
I mean, racism coming into a lot of our jurisdiction and a lot of like our modernized cases too.
We're still dealing with a lot of this, just in to your point, a modernized fashion. That's interesting to me.
Which is why I found it interesting because it's still happening today. We have not learned from our previous ancestors.
Haven't learned from history.
We have not learned anything from our previous ancestors in history.
That's sad.
Yeah, and that's why I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
So relations with the villagers were strained, and to make matters worse, 1692 was also the worst winter they've ever had on record. So when I lived in New England, I moved in 2014, which is probably the worst winter they've had in a century. They had 3 blizzards back to back in 3 weeks. They were shoveling fucking snow into the harbor, or the harbor is what they say. And also I called my boyfriend, who is now my husband, and I was like, is this normal? And he's a jackass and he's an asshole. And he said, yeah, this is totally normal. And I wanted to leave New England at that point.
I remember that.
Also, I found it very unsettling that I still had to go to work during a blizzard.
Oh, yeah, it's nothing to them.
It's nothing.
In the South?
In the South, you get a dusting. You get like maybe a hint of dusting and you're gone. You're like out for the week.
Oh, yeah.
I was just so distraught the fact that I actually had to go to work. Back to this story, like, there's battles being had, there's starvation and disease going on, and on top of that, this is the worst winter they've had. So that winter, 9-year-old Betty Paris and 11-year-old Abigail Williams started behaving very strangely and unsettling. The physician found nothing physically wrong with the 2 cousins, but the girls were diagnosed with under an evil hand. And knowing anything about the Puritans back then for religious reasons, they wholeheartedly believed in the devil and demons and any kind of like spiritual possession going on. So that was the diagnosis that the physician had, is under an evil hand. Getting back to like history of what the Puritans believed, they believed that the devil wreaked havoc in the world using human agents. And what I mean by that is like witches or human agents conjured apparitions and would torture children. That's what they truly believed. Either the devil would be inside possessing human agents, or witches were making witchcraft to kind of torture children and conjure evil spirits. So as news of the cousins spread across the village, it's a small village. In any small town, there's going to be some gossip.
Something that also still happens to
happens to this day.
Yeah, right.
As news spread of like the behaviors going on with these 2 cousins, miraculously, the symptoms begin to spread across the village. Imagine that.
Yeah.
You hear about this gossip and, oh my God,
yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's everywhere
It's
now.
everywhere. Oh my God.
You never had that happen.
Never. So Accounts describe 12 afflicted girls contorting their bodies, having fits of prickly skin, and like behaviors of screaming and outburst.
Having what of skin?
Like prickly skin. Like their skin was prickly. They were having like warm sensations going up and down their body.
Okay.
Kind of.
So they're having
like they're having a possession of a devil inside their body, and like warm sensations and just outbursts and contorting their bodies every which way to be weird. That's what these 12 girls of afflicted girls were saying. That's what they were accusing was happening to them after word spread of those two cousins.
So they're saying that that's what was happening to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So these girls said I had prickly skin, contorting my body, had no control after being in contact with these girls?
Yes. 4 out of the 12 afflicted girls soon accused 3 local women of torturing them. All 3 of the accused were considered outsiders in some way of the community. And I want to say outsiders, like these could be slaves, these could be widows, these could be women that are spinsters, they're not married. These could be people that didn't attend church all the time. These could be people that just were outsiders, didn't have a lot of friends. Those were considered people that were outsiders and more likely accused. Now, in what modern day does that happen all the time?
Where do I start? I hate people.
I hate closed-minded people that think that everything's
just one way. And it has to be this one way or else you're wrong.
Exactly. But back to the case. On February 29th, the authorities arrested Sarah Good, who was a local poor pregnant woman that had a younger daughter. Sarah Osborne, who had not been attending church lately, but she was actually suing one of the accusers that was accusing her for different reasons. I could not find like the specific reason that she was suing this family, but I mean, there's motive there for them to want to accuse her and get her out.
So she sued them before.
Yeah, she sued them before that she was accused.
Okay.
And then Tituba, she was an enslaved woman that lived in Betty Paris's home at the time. And Betty Paris was one of the 2 cousins that started this whole thing. So Tituba denied harming the girls at first, but then confessed to practicing witchcraft on the devil's orders. She then accused Good and Osborne of having forced her to do it. Good and Osborne both maintained their innocence, and Osborne actually died in prison, while Good's husband turned against her in court and testified that she is actually a witch.
This poor girl. Like,
poor pregnant woman.
Yeah, turning against her husband. People are accusing her.
To make matters worse, Good's 4-year-old daughter was in prison and eventually gave testimony against her mother too, saying that she was actually a witch. Good delivered her baby in jail, and then it shortly died. And then she was convicted guilty for doing witchcraft and shortly hanged and executed right after that.
Holy crap, there is so much to unpack right there. I feel like we just went through that. Okay, so this poor girl.
So these are the first 3 accusers of the Salem Witch Trial. You have accused of the Salem Witch Trial. You have Sarah Good, who is a poor pregnant woman with a 4-year-old. You have Sarah Osborne, who was actually she was accused because she hadn't been to church in a while, but she was also suing Betty Paris's family before the Salem Witch Trials started happening. And then you have Tituba, who is an enslaved woman that lived in Betty Paris's home. And then shortly after that, Tituba she figured out a way to get out of it. She said, I was not tormenting these girls at all. But then she figured if she confessed to these ridiculous accusations, I can maybe get out of this. So she then was like, yes, I have been doing witchcraft. I have been doing it by the devil's orders. But Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne had been forcing me to do it. And shortly after she accused these 2 women, Sarah Osborne had died in prison while waiting her trial. And then Sarah Good, she she was in trial and her husband turned against her and testified that, you know, she will become a witch very shortly. She could at the blink of a hat. Like that.
What a jerk.
And then her 4-year-old daughter that she had was quickly imprisoned right after that and forced to give a testimony against her mother.
That's so sad. Also, her husband's a dick.
Her husband's a fucking dick.
Like, what a coward.
And a 4-year-old doesn't know any better.
No, not mad at the child.
Not mad at the child at all.
Imprison the child. What? But that husband's a dick.
Shortly after that, she finally gave birth to her baby in jail that ended up dying. And then because she stuck to her innocence and was found guilty, and then shortly executed.
By hanging.
By hanging.
This story sucks.
So shortly after Sarah Good was hanged and executed, Tituba was held in custody until May of that year and then was released. These 3 victims were just the beginning. As accusations multiplied, others like Tituba made false confessions to save themselves.
What would you do?
I would confess. I would confess that I'm innocent.
Yeah. Would you throw other people under the bus?
No. No matter how much Slytherin I have in me, I would not throw anybody under the bus.
Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't live with myself. I couldn't imagine pointing the finger knowing that they're going to die.
Yeah.
Because that's basically like me murdering them. I couldn't do that. The authorities told one accused witch that if she would be hanged if she did not confess and freed if she did.
Yeah.
They were not particularly interested in thoroughly investigating these claims.
Go
figure. So the court accepted all kinds of evidence. Complicating matters worse, many of the jurors were related to the accusers.
Oh, geez.
Compromising their objectivity.
Yeah.
So those who dared to speak out, such as one of the judges that were in the Salem Witch Trials, came under suspicion. So no one was actually safe.
I was going to say everyone is.
Everyone is on trial here because even the judge, if he were to speak out and be like, this is ridiculous, then he was under suspicion.
Yeah.
By spring of 1693, over 100 people had been imprisoned and 14 women and 6 men had been executed by hanging due to the Salem Witch Trials. By this time, accusations had been spreading across beyond Salem to neighboring communities. And even the most powerful figures, like I had said, were targets. When his own wife was accused of being a witch, the governor of Massachusetts actually suspended the trials at this point. At this time, sentences were amended and prisoners were released and arrests had stopped at that point. But before that, judges, other type of high authorities, they were all accused.
So the community, to your point, everyone was at risk. Like there was, wow. That's terrifying. That's terrifying. So not only, to your point, are you dealing with the plague, terrible winter, like all these different factors, we're going to throw in nobody's safe. Everyone's going to come under accusation that you could potentially be involved in witchcraft.
Some have described the girls that were suffering from the ailments that they had from hallucinations were caused by actually a fungus that was in the village.
I forgot about that.
Which is a condition that causes swelling in the brain to cause these hallucinations. And ultimately, that's the reason for their behavior that they had said. But honestly, the behavior is unknown.
Yeah.
So they could have been faking. They could have had a fungus. They don't really know what the cause was for all the contortions, all the hallucinations, and everything else that was going on.
Oh, interesting.
What we do know is that adults accepted wild accusations by children as hard evidence. Today, the Salem Witch Trials remain as a cautionary tale of the dangers of group thinking and scapegoating using the power of fear to manipulate human perception. And that still goes on today, actually. And what comes to mind is actually the West Memphis 3. Those, not only the victims, but the 3 young boys that were accused during the Satanic Panic and were accused because they listened to Metallica, they wore all black.
Yeah.
And they were accused because they were kind of outsiders of the community and were sentenced to these horrendous crimes. They were kind of just scapegoated.
Oh, definitely.
And the
100%.
police and the authorities were just like, well, we're not going to do hard evidence. We're just going to accuse these 3 teenagers because of they believe in the devil. So why not? They probably did it.
Satanic Panic.
Satanic Panic. To wrap it up, those are the Salem Witch Trials.
Honestly, okay, so like I knew what we got, like the history version, like the history class version of it. If you're from America, like you've probably heard this story in your like 5th grade history class. But like I think what touched me like so much is the details.
The details of the actual women's names.
Yeah, the names, the fact that they had families and families that turned against them and like some of them were pregnant
women that were actually hanged after their child died.
Yeah.
What unsettles me is that this stuff still happens nowadays. It's still in modern times because it's just a different type of outsider that we consider nowadays that would be a scapegoat for any type of crimes that would happen. Let us know what you think. Let us know if there's any other cases that kind of remind you of the Salem Witch Trials that are in modern days that we didn't think about off the top of our heads. Yeah. We want to know your thoughts. I don't know.
Oh my God, I just spilled my drink.
Party foul. Party foul.
On that note, we're going to sign off.
Ready? Be a bitch and stay alive. Cheers.
There's no way that I was wrong. Like,
why are you talking to me?
That sounds miserable.
It's literally the best thing in the world. I don't know what the fuck you're saying. Suffering from hallucination.
Bugs the shit out of me.
What the fuck did they say? As actually, fuck my life. We gotta figure something out, girl. God.
Should we get another drink?